Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast, and I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Seeing none, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. Councillor Van Hazinga, would you lead us in the salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Madam Assistant Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Councillor Van Hazinga.
Here.
President Zarella.
Here.
Councillor Boschman.
Here.
Councillor Kucher. Councillor Cragen.
Here.
Councillor Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Di Natale.
Here.
Councillor Fleming. Councillor Green is here remotely.
Here virtually.
Virtually, thank you. Councillor Schultz.
Here.
Councillor Squalia.
Present.
Thank you very much. Before we go to public forum, I would just like to take a moment to welcome our new city clerk, Joanna Bellotta, and to thank our assistant city clerk, Amanda Alford, for her excellent work in a position that she didn't expect to have to take and didn't expect to be taking for so long. But she got us through an election and the following year, more or less, and did an excellent job with it, and we thank her. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that we are also very much looking forward to working with our new city clerk to continue moving this city onwards and upwards.
I feel the same way. Very fortunate to be able to work with all of you.
Thank you. So the public had been advised to contact the city clerk's office regarding any comments of no more than 2 minutes. None were brought to our attention. If there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak, please approach the center podium, state your name and address, and the item on the agenda on which you wish to speak. And you may speak for not more than 2 minutes on that subject.
Jacqueline Wetchy, Fitchburg resident. I'm speaking on agenda item number 4. I oppose ordinance 015-22. It will increase the volume of fines on residents and businesses. At the last meeting, Councilor Zarella said, and I'm paraphrasing, that if people can't afford to maintain their properties, they shouldn't live here. We're the poorest community in the area. If people can't live here, they can't live anywhere and they'll be homeless. His remarks sure sound like gentrification. Fitchburg started out as a farming town. Later, our population grew due to mill workers and we became a city. We've always been a working class community and we're trying our best here. Everybody wants clean and attractive housing. Instead of fining people, why not remove barriers to home improvements? Why not eliminate permitting fees? Why not change building codes so we remove all requirements not mandated by the state? Why not work with our state legislators to change regulations so we are no more restrictive than New Hampshire? We spend a lot trying to attract businesses and residents to the city, yet Massachusetts continues to lose population while New Hampshire continues to gain because of its live free or die approach. You should try it. I remember in years past, people said we must continue with city trash pickup because, quote, lots of people in Fitchburg are dirty, end quote. What if they're not dirty? What if they're just poor? Why not remove the $16 charge for a bulk pickup? Why not give people free trash or recycling carts if theirs go missing, instead of charging $60 or $100? Is there really a black market in trash receptacles that you can't just do this? Imagine a city where instead of setting up a new bureaucracy whose sole purpose is to punish and fine us, you came up with ways to remove the red tape and fees so that maintaining our properties is easier. And if you're still determined to pass this, you should at least exempt owner-occupied properties.
Any further comment from the public? Seeing none, we will now, there is no report of the Appointments Committee at this time. We will now hear a report from the Committee on Records. Councillor Cruz.
The records appear to be in order. Thank you, Councillor.
Second.
We don't actually have a motion.
Motion to
Oh.
approve.
Okay, I have a motion and a retroactive second to approve the report of the Committee on Records. If there is no objection, we'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is accepted. We have one communication from His Honor the Mayor, new appointment of 2 full-time student police officers for the Fitchburg Police Department. Anslow Jalot Jr. and Scott George. That will be sent to the Appointments Committee. And then we have the report of the Committee of the Council as a whole. We took up 2 items. I'm not telling most of you anything you don't already know, but we took up 2 items, 015 and 01622. Liz Murphy, Chair of the NICE Task Force and Director of Housing and Development, to approve the enclosed petition to accept MGL Chapter 40U, and to accept the enclosed petition to establish a residential and commercial vacant property registry ordinance with minimum requirements. The committee recommended the granting of both of those. And the matters are before the council.
Motion to approve the committee's report. Second.
I have a motion
On the
and
motion.
second. On the motion, Councilor Brochman.
I'm going to ask the council to hold off on this vote. I tried calling today. I even called Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I asked them about 40U, and half the people in there didn't even know what 40U was. I like to get more information on this from different communities. I just don't want to vote on an issue that I'm not sure that it'll go good with the residents of this city. I want a clean city, don't get me wrong, but I want to know what I'm voting on. And if I can't get it from Salem, and if I can't get it from Lawrence, and they're telling me they don't know it, then I'm sorry. Everyone I talked to didn't know that much about it. And the person that did, I couldn't get a hold of them. And I left my message, and they didn't call me back. Shouldn't say they didn't want to call me back, but they did not call me back. So I'm asking that we ought to slow down on this, know what we're voting on, so we all understand it. We went this far, what's a little bit longer? Why does it have to be done right away? So that's my motion. I'm not going to vote for it, both of them.
All right, well, the current motion before the council is to approve the committee's recommendation. If that motion fails, then, of course, any councilor is free to make an alternative motion. I'd just like to comment briefly, both to reiterate that this first was sent to the committee as a whole, the council as a whole, in February. So there's been ample time for consideration. I personally would not be in favor of holding this any longer. I'd also like to clarify the remarks that were paraphrased by a member of the public. What I said at the Council as a Whole committee was that basic upkeep on your property is a property owner's expense, just as utilities are, just as homeowner's insurance or the mortgage is, and that therefore, just like if your home is too large and you can't afford to heat it, you need to downsize. Likewise, if you can't afford to do basic maintenance so that your property is not creating a public nuisance for your neighbors, then you need to consider other options. It is not my desire to drive out low-income residents. I know several low-income residents in the city of Fitchburg who take great pride in their premises. What they have isn't much, but it's theirs, and they take care of it. This 40U is, once more, I just want to reiterate, this is intended to deal with the major problem properties, most of which are owned by out-of-town landlords or out-of-town developers, investors, et cetera, and which receive quite a lot of complaints from the very residents who live in some of these somewhat more economically depressed areas and are trying to do their best, but have neighbors or people across the street who are, who have trash spilling into the roadway or houses that are just shy of being condemnable. It's a problem. But this is not, let me put it this way, I would be very disappointed in the administration, and I don't think that I will have to be, if this were used to go after minor infractions on the part of otherwise proud and law-abiding residents of the city. Councilor Squalia.
Just to clarify this petition, the petition wording will come back to us in ordinance form for the final verbiage. So any discussions that we had at the Council of the Whole, they may get incorporated into a changed version.
Correct.
Thank you.
There will be at least at least two more opportunities in which to amend any language that comes before us before it becomes law. I'm sorry, Vice President Van Hazinga and then Councilor Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's worthwhile pointing out that this ordinance does not create any new regulation or requirements of homeowners or business owners. It doesn't create any new fines. All it does is allow the city to enforce the regulations that we already have in place. That right now, the city is very hamstrung in actually enforcing the rules that we have in maintaining the codes. And this allows the city to better do that and make sure that this is a safe, good place to live. And I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Schultz.
Is there a way to exempt owner-occupied properties within the law? I mean,
We certainly could. When it comes to us in ordinance form, that would be an amendment that would be germane and that would be in order for any
if we're really
councilor to
after,
raise.
absentee landlords, I mean, why penalize people that occupy their own homes?
This ordinance in particular, this 40U process, is a general change to how our ordinances are enforced. It doesn't impose any additional requirements, like Vice President Van Hazinga noted. So I'm not sure what exactly we would exempt owner-occupied properties from. They would still get exactly as many violation notices as they otherwise would. It would just be handled through a different process afterwards. So anyone who isn't being targeted now is not going to suddenly start getting targeted going forward. But that said, if we wanted to, either as part of these ordinances or as a separate amendment to the underlying regulatory ordinances, if we wanted to create special categories for owner-occupied properties, that would be something that this council would have the power to do in state law to,
I would think we'd want to work with them more than, penalize them.
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly, I completely agree. This, part of the need for this law is precisely that there are several property owners in the city who have no interest in working with us, who have no interest in being good neighbors, and who simply want to wring as much money out of their property as they can at the expense of their neighbors and the city. But yes, certainly, when this comes to us in ordinance form, we can entertain any amendments that anyone may have. That said, I have a motion. Councilor Brochman.
I just want to point out, Mr. President, that a lot of the council, and I think you don't realize, it's not just the absentee landlord. I think some of the absentee, I'm not saying, you even get the same problem with the single-family owner that just doesn't care. But everything costs. And the cost today is a lot higher than what you believe it is. And I know for a fact, you're not talking about coming in at a $50 repair. That $50 repair yesterday is now probably over a $1,000 repair. Now, I'll give you an example because I can't use different names, but I'll use me. The building commissioner said, Paul, you're going to change the wiring and put an emergency exit on your property. I said, well, my property's 80 years old, and I changed the wiring back in 1990. And he told me it changed then. That job that would have cost me $50 back in 1990, if they told me to do it then, cost me over $2,000 that day I had to do it. To over $2,000. So when you tell me, and you try to explain that to the public, that you got to fix your properties, well, I'll go back to my statement originally to tell you, I don't know what people can afford. To me, cutting the grass, that's labor, that's your job, and that you can do that for free. You can get a push mower. Cutting the hedges, you can get the old-fashioned type and cut the hedges. To bend over and pick up a piece of trash, you can do that. That I agree. But to come back and tell me that you got to go and fix it when you don't have the money, then that's not right. It isn't right. And I have a hard time swallowing it. And that's what I'm saying. And I'm asking again that we slow down on this. There's no hurry. And I'm going to also point out to you that some of the things that were brought up, and I talked to Mr. Tom Sabrowski today about it, I have questions about it, especially when you're telling me what I have to do when I own a piece of property if my property is vacant. It's my business if my property is vacant. My business. It's not yours, and I'm the fool to lose money, not you. You're not losing money. As long as I pay my taxes, that should be the main important issue. That's my argument. But don't tell me that I have to fill it up when I don't have to fill it up. If I want to leave it empty, I want to leave it empty.
And Counselor, you're now talking, I believe, about the 01622 petition.
Yeah, that too. Because we're voting on both of them
right
now.
As we discussed during the council as a whole meeting, if it's vacant and you do pay your taxes, keep the city informed, and keep the property in good condition, then you're fine. But what you can't do is let it sit vacant with broken windows and leaking roof and overgrown lawn and say, well, I'm not going to bother cleaning it up until until the market rebounds and I can rent it. That's what we've seen a number of landlords do, and that's not fair to the neighbors. Councilor Gianatali.
Yeah, I think we're getting into the weeds on these matters. I was very hesitant to vote for 40U last week. It took some convincing, and I put a lot of deference in people like Steve Curry, Ernie Martineau, Mark Barbadoro, a lot of other inspectional division personnel that I talked to. But the chief of police was behind this, fire department's behind this, and in my 18 years as a city councilor, aside from the roads, the most frequent complaints I get are code enforcement and property vacancy. We hear it all the time about downtown. Too many vacant storefronts. Everyone ignores the storefronts that aren't vacant and focus on the ones that are, because it's easy to be negative. So I sat there last week, and I had some of my colleagues convince me. Councilor Van Huizenga was one of them, who said, just because it's new doesn't mean we shouldn't give it a shot. And nothing changes with 40U. It's just how we go after those particular people who are flagrantly violating and ignoring. Notice I said flagrantly violating and ignoring. We have a history in this city of departments that provide a lot of leniency. I know from personal experience in dealing with constituent matters that the Board of Health or the building, they're not going to issue and levy fines on someone the day they find a violation. They give these individuals time to correct it. The only time they levy fines is as a last resort. Chief Martineau gave a perfect example during a Finance Committee meeting about home alarms going off. He has properties that the alarm may go off 4 or 5 times. He's given them 2 or 3 opportunities to make good on the infraction, and they don't respond, then the hammer gets dropped. So this is one way to not circumvent the state court system, but to be in alignment with it, or parallel to it. So there's the state court system, and then there's the system we're going to put into place with 40U, and the people always have the option at the end to appeal to the state court system if they don't like what the city does. That doesn't change. No enforcement mechanisms change. It's just the means by which we adjudicate and get these cases resolved. So I'm in favor of that because I had a woman last week tell me about a property she lives next to. This goes on the vacant registry. Property is vacant. It looks like hell. And I hear the word, it's not fair. Well, it's not fair to her, who lives next to it, whose home value is depressed because of the property next to her. And if the property next to her is depressed, it makes her value go down and makes her property taxation go up. Because people think if your value drops, your property tax, no, it does not. It goes up, actually, because you got to make up for that lost value, because the city's always raising 2.5. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to the person across the street. It's not fair to the street next to that. So it has an effect on the neighborhood. And I didn't even hesitate on the vacancy part, because while it is true, I guess, that a private property owner has the right to have a property be vacant for 20 years, I guess it's also the right to let it go into a state of disrepair. But it's the chicken or the egg thing. It's like, okay, so what are we doing here? Do we not think it's fair that a delinquent who shouldn't be owning property and lets it sit there for 20 years and goes to hell and decreases the property values elsewhere and makes our city look bad, we're going to pat them on the head and say, it's okay, we know you can't afford it, but then complain that Main Street's got vacant storefronts everywhere? I mean, I don't get people sometimes. You can't have it both ways. Either you want to attack the vacancy problem or you don't. I have no sympathy for people, especially on this street, who have vacant property. I know a lot of them through talking of who they are, and a lot of them are loaded. They got money to burn. That's why they sit on these properties. That's why they don't do anything with them, because they can afford to wait 10 or 15 years, because they don't care to pay the tax. Here's the tax, fine, whatever. I'll wait till the market gets better. They don't give a damn. Okay? They don't live here. They got tons of money to burn. Those are the people I have problems with. All right? We're not here to say to the poor person who lost their job and has 3 children, you're out on the street, pal, you know, because you can't afford to fix your property. That's not what our departments are out there to do. So when I look at this, I say to myself, people want it both ways. You don't like it when the food inspector inspects restaurants, and if you saw some of the photos I've seen from some of these restaurants, you'd want to put the person in jail if they didn't find them. They get excoriated online all the time that we are not business friendly because our health inspectors actually go after violators who cook food on the floor. But then we're saying we're being too mean to people. You can't have it both ways. There are laws, we need to enforce them, and the problem is we don't enforce them enough. So if this assists in that avenue, then so be it. I have no sympathy for any of them that are flagrantly in violation. And if you don't have the money to fix up a property and you had no hardships, that's not my problem. We can't pick and choose favorites. And lastly, again, I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of these issues, they're not hurting for cash. They just don't care. Well, I have a problem with that, because I got to hear it every day. Why is this building still empty? Why is this building still empty? Well, time to kick them in the behind a little bit. And if that's what this does, go nuts, because I'm sick and tired of listening to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion and second to accept the report and recommendations of the Council as a Whole Committee. Madam Clerk, Madam Assistant Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Counselor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
President Zarella.
Yes.
Counselor Boishman.
No.
Counselor Kuchar.
No.
Counselor Cragan.
Yes.
Counselor Cruz.
Yes.
Counselor Di Natale.
Yes.
Counselor Green.
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
And Counselor Squalia.
Aye.
That passes 8-2.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a report of the Finance Committee. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance met on April 13th and took up the following: 6422, a loan order for $2.75 million to pay for the cost of demolishing the existing and constructing a new Oak Hill water storage tank in the city and construction of a new Oak Hill water storage tank in the city as outlined in the enclosed order. That was adopted. I just wanted to note on that for the report that Deputy Commissioner DeLine stated that we're losing about 10 gallons per minute of water from that station. It is well beyond its service life. We've gotten about 60 years out of it. The new system that we'll be putting in will begin in July, should be over by the end of the year. That should last us about a century. And it is basically an interest-free loan because we're getting about 13 to 17% off of the project costs through the state RSA program through DEP. And so that was adopted unanimously. 6522 was an order to accept, to approve $1.4 million from available funds to the Fitchburg Fire Department for replacing the Ladder 2 fire truck. The Ladder 2 truck is about 20 years old. It is beyond its service life. To fix it would have cost about over $500,000. This truck is actually not a bells and whistles truck. It's a pretty basic ladder truck, but because of how large it is, it's about 2 times the size of a pumper truck and has a lot more technology involved with it. That's why it's a lot more expensive. In the meantime, it takes about 18 months for a new truck to be constructed. These are built to order. So once the order is placed, it begins to get built. So it takes 18 months. So our friends in Boston are loaning the Fitchburg Fire Department a ladder truck for that 18-month period, while Ladder 2 is taken out of commission and the new one is being constructed. That was adopted unanimously. 6622 is to accept the approval of funds from the American Rescue Plan Act for $50,000 to cover the additional hours spent by the Community Development Office on ARPA compliance and administration. This will take a part-time program assistant position and make it full-time to cover these added needs, which should run to about 2026, at which time we will reassess. But the goal is to cover the mass requirements that our auditing group cannot do on their own anymore. And this money will be taken out of ARPA to fund that added effort for that position. And any future work that position may require will also come out of ARPA, so they'll make a note of that next year when they look at the next $15 million. That was adopted. 6722 was to approve an order for $55,000 from available funds. I'm sorry, 6722 was held in committee, and 8922 was a resolution that we adopted unanimously that ran congruent to the water storage tank. We took the vote at the same time. This was a resolution to to allow the water department to acquire about 49.4 acres of land near the Jewel Hill Farm conservation area that we recently acquired. And that will be borne by half by a state grant and half by the conservation funds that the water department maintains. So there's no cost to the budget.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the report of the Finance Committee. If there is no objection, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it is approved. We have orders 090.
Move 9822 through 10422 be sent to finance.
I will take that as a motion to waive the reading.
Waive the reading.
If there is, do I have a second on that?
Second.
If there is no objection, all right, the reading is waived and those are referred to finance. We then have 10522.
Motion waive reading of petitions 10522 through 10822 and be sent to their respective committees.
Second.
I have a motion and second to waive reading on 105 through 10822. If there is no objection, then they are referred to their respective committees. I have one noted announcement this evening. Ward 1 City Councilor Bernie Schultz is hosting a Ward 1 community meeting on Monday, May 9th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Fitchburg Legislative Building, 700 Main Street. Mayor Stephen DiNatale and Treasurer Ann Cervantes will make presentations and answer questions following their presentations. Thank you. Also, we have an event, Go Green with Veterans and Families, at the Highland Baptist Church, 19 Cedar Street. on Saturday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There will be plants, potting soil, seeds, pots, and refreshments. Members of the general public are welcome to attend, and a small donation is welcome. It will be free for area veterans and their families, and it is a drop-in event.
Mr. President, don't forget the ward cleanup of 1 and 6, I think, this
2
week.
and 3 is the 30th.
2 and 3.
1 and 6 is this weekend.
That's true.
Okay, yes, I don't have that written down, but yes, ward cleanup for wards 2 and 3.
No, 1 and 6.
1 and 6 will be this weekend, Saturday, is it?
Yep.
And
8
the
to 12.
location,
8
sorry?
to 12.
8 to 12.
44
And-
Winoosknock Road. 44 Winoosknock Road.
Thank you, Counselor. 44 Winoosknock Road. I apologize, I had meant to write that down before I came here, but it slipped my mind.
Well, Mr. President, remember one thing, Ward 2, the best ward in the city, and Ward 3, the second best, is the following week, April 30th, at Daniel Street. I just want to
Okay.
make sure everybody understands that.
All right, Ward 2 and 3, following weekend, Daniel Street, at the park. Yep, Daniel Street Park, same times.
And my final thing, Mr. President.
Point of order, Mr. President. Isn't there a council rule that says that announcements can be submitted to you in writing before we have the meeting?
It's been my policy. It is not in the council rules. Is this,
There's not a rule, Mr. President, that talks about announcements?
there is not.
I'm not aware of that.
At least I don't have one that I recall. Let me see if we have one.
I could have swore we had a rule because it's always a free-for-all at this time of the meeting, and I thought we put a rule on.
It has been, I believe, just my policy.
I'm not
as
against
chair,
announcements.
but-
There needs to be some order with the announcements,
Okay.
'Cause I'll
all right.
pull up
I'm
5 right
checking
now
the-
if I want.
I'm checking the rules.
you know?
There is no rule.
I wasn't asking the counselor over there, I was asking the president.
Point of
Both
order.
of you, please, the point of order has been referred to the chair. The chair will rule on it. If I need consultation, we have a council parliamentarian.
I'll put one in then if there is none.
There is no rule of the council on that subject.
Okay, I'll be following one next week.
That being said, I would reiterate my request that all councilors put announcements through me, either by emailing me ahead of time and copying the clerk or assistant clerk, and also, or if something comes up that was not able to be anticipated ahead of time, then bring me something at the beginning of the meeting.
Well, Mr. President, I just want to say one thing. I want to apologize, but I thought I was doing the mayor a big favor by having you announce that, because they asked me to make sure we can get as many volunteers as we can to
Certainly.
these cleanups.
Yes,
But
as
next
I
time I won't
said,
do
I
that.
appreciate the reminder. I had forgotten to write that down. Just, as we've said, just in the future, everyone please send things to me, and we'll just go from there.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. You can
adjourn.
call me if you don't want to email. That's fine, too.
I'll give you a call.
All right.
I'll call you from the Dominican Republic to tell you I'm at the beach.
Okay. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second. If there is no objection, we stand adjourned.